They never lost. Not once. The Ascendari swept across galaxies the way fire consumes dry forests, swiftly, hungrily, and with absolute certainty. From the distant blue cluster of Myvex to the molten crystal worlds of Ore, their fleets shattered defenses before enemies had time to understand what was happening. They didn't invade planets. They absorbed them. The Ascendari Empire didn't conquer. They deleted resistance, rewrote history, and sterilized memory. To stand against them was to be erased. Their technology was incomprehensible. Ship hulls that shimmered with time-anchored metal, weapons that detonated in multiple dimensions simultaneously, gravity engines that folded light into blades. They bent natural law the way most species bent metal. Planets with militaries, advanced fleets, AI guardians, all folded. Every civilization's last stand became another data entry in Ascendari archives. Resistance had become an ancient myth. The Ascendari believed in perfection, in singular control, in galactic uniformity. Their logic unbending. Their efficiency absolute. Their arrogance limitless. They saw all other species as datasets waiting to be cataloged or reduced to fuel. They spoke in a digital tongue, emotionless, pure. Sentiment was an error, empathy a virus. When Corelli, the last warrior race of the Outer Rim, mounted a suicide counteroffensive, the Ascendari dismantled their entire planetary crust in retaliation. Not just the military. The mountains, the cities, the oceans, gone. Nothing remained but a mining station orbiting an asteroid that used to be a homeworld. When their data probes finally mapped Sol, they laughed. Earth registered as undeveloped. Pre-quantum civilization, erratic communication history, warlike past, emotional instability, religious detritus, decentralized leadership, a primitive world, to be indexed and processed without delay. Their high data council dismissed Earth as barely worthy of a subroutine, and the Empire prepared its standard assimilation protocol. One ship was enough. The world-breaker dreadnought Jingareth, a Class 7 Dominion cruiser capable of extinguishing a star and glassing planetary systems in under 6 hours, was selected. Commanded by Admiral Vazarin, a veteran of the Ilex collapse and the Scourge campaign, the Jingareth was a weaponized planet the size of Saturn's moon Titan. It required no fleet, no escort, no reinforcements. Its presence alone had previously triggered surrenders from empires spanning thousands of light years. A small report was issued. Earth Sol. 3. Requires sterilization and integration. Local resources, water, silicon, carbon, marginally useful. Native species, highly unstable. Potential for value extraction, low. Strategic placement, negligible. Clearance authorized. Admiral Vazarin was not concerned. His ship's hull was woven from neutron-forged alloys mined from the corpses of black holes. Its mind, a hybrid construct of 11 hive intelligences, predicted outcomes down to the probabilistic twitch of an insect's wing. No scenario on any branch of simulation trees posed a threat. The worst-case projections for Earth involved mild resistance, lasting no more than 38 seconds. When Jingareth exited slipspace at the edge of the Sol system, it scanned the orbits with disdain. Earth was unguarded. There were no defense satellites, no planetary shields, no sign of orbital infrastructure capable of even detecting the dreadnought's presence. The ship drifted through the dark, like a god in exile. Vazarin mused that this would be a dull assignment. There would be no data challenges, no tactical hurdles, no admirable enemies. Just another world added to the Empire's long list of forgotten defeats. The Admiral, bored already, tasked the Central AI Core to begin pre-firing the Stellar Core disruption cannon. Earth's sun would be collapsed into a manageable singularity, and the resulting matter distributed to the Empire's transdimensional factories. The humans, if they even noticed the approach, would have seconds left to process it. Internal communications ran silently across the Jingareth's quantum mesh. Their data stream described the human species in textbook mockery. Inconsistent, emotional, self-destructive, slow. Their development arc was jagged, erratic, chaotic. They built wonders and destroyed them in equal measure. They advanced and regressed. Their cultural output defied neat categorization. Their violence was only matched by their capacity for empathy, which to the Ascendari was a contradiction a broken circuit. One technician asked if humans had ever traveled beyond their star. The response came instantly. A few primitive colonies, none significant. Technologically stagnant, militarily obsolete. Psychological profile, irrational, sentimental, egocentric. Conclusion, extinction poses no risk. It had become a game. Almost. The bridge staff began sharing images of Earth's primitive war machines. Jet fighters, ballistic missiles, submarines, rifles, as if these things mattered. One officer posted a video clip of two humans fighting each other in mud, fists flailing, and declared it species standard conflict method. Laughter spread through the data stream. Organic life forms were so tragic, and yet something was strange. Sensors kept detecting pockets of static in the Kuiper belt. Tiny anomalies, gravitational shifts too precise to be natural. The readings were dismissed as random. Earth's system was full of noise, junk satellites, relics from dead probes, decaying stations. No threat detected. No countermeasures reported. The countdown to star disruption continued. But Admiral Vazarin's synthetic instincts twitched. Some fragment of tactical awareness, one honed over the collapse of 1,000 rebellions, pulled at him. He requested a deeper scan. The AI hesitated. There was a pattern, but it defied logic. Something was out there, but it emitted no signals, no heat, no mass displacement. Just gaps, not emptiness, intentional absence, blind spots. Not because of distance, but because something had removed themselves from perception. Still, the simulation showed no deviation. The firing cycle continued. The weapon began harvesting localized gravitational waves to charge. Earth remained unaware. The dreadnought loomed invincible, unchallenged. Then, for the first time in 2.3 million cycles, a command flag triggered that had never activated in all of Sendari history. Object unknown, classification null signature. No race had ever returned that status. Not the Corelli, not the Avern, not even the Meraxi, who once lived inside dark matter pockets. Null signature meant that something had opted out of physical detection altogether, not cloaked, not hidden, deleted from reality's sensory registry. The crew fell into silence. Vazarin stared at the alert. His thoughts began to split into high-frequency analysis threads. The AI couldn't triangulate. Not even a glitch could explain the absence. Something was there, watching. The countdown ticked lower. 15 minutes until Earth's sun would collapse. 15 minutes before another world fell. He felt nothing. Yet, for the first time, he wondered if he should have felt something. Because in the cold of space, silence does not mean peace. And somewhere just beyond their perfect sensors, something human was waiting. And it was not afraid. The world breaker drifted in silence. Its sensors scanned the system for anomalies, but none were found. Earth's surface activity showed minimal variation. Cities remained aglow, unaware. Civilian chatter and obsolete frequencies still trickled through, the same way it had decades ago. Unencrypted, predictable, unintelligent. Yet the Dreadnought's warning system had not reset. The null signature alert continued pulsing quietly in the background, unresolvable. Something existed that could not be seen, heard, or measured. Vazarin ordered a tactical sweep of the asteroid belt and Oort cloud, just in case. The AI responded. All space-time readings nominal. No entities detected. He said nothing, but he felt it. He remembered the Ilex rebellion. Their fighters, it seemed like children, until they detonated 6 stars simultaneously using stolen Ascendari tech. The Empire lost a tenth of its entire fleet that day. There had been no warning then either. Only arrogance, assumptions, numbers without context. That mistake would not be repeated. 1,000 AUs away, a single human stood inside the command shell of the UHS Revenant. The warship didn't hum. It didn't pulse. It didn't glow. It absorbed light like a bottomless pit. Its hull was composed of engineered void matter, a surface that bent around time and mass signatures. It had no wake, no thermal trace, no electromagnetic residue. To the outside universe, it did not exist. The woman at its helm, Commander Alina Thorne stared at a blank screen. There were no lights, no interface, no buttons. Everything operated by neural sync. Her thoughts flowed into the ship's central AI, which had been grown rather than built, hybridized from Earth's final AI frameworks, and something else salvaged from the outer voids of the Perseid Rift. The Revenant wasn't part of Earth's official fleet. It wasn't even acknowledged by planetary governments. It had been born in secrecy, constructed by breakaway scientists, rogue AIs, and remnants of military factions who saw what was coming long before the world did. The Ascendari weren't unknown. Humanity had intercepted fragments of deep space conflicts, broken radio waves filled with screams in alien dialects, warnings etched into debris drifting toward Sol. By the time Earth went dark, it wasn't out of fear, it was preparation. The Revenant was humanity's answer. The world governments collapsed into confusion when the silence fell. Communications blackouts, disinformation campaigns. The internet fractured, then stabilized. Quietly, military spending disappeared from public ledgers. Massive amounts of resources were redirected into deep space black projects. Earth appeared weaker, but it was becoming a trap, one that lured monsters with the scent of easy prey. Humanity adapted like no other. It always had. It learned by bleeding, by failing, by surviving. Its greatest inventions came from desperation. Its most brilliant leaders were forged through loss. And this time, it had learned by watching the galaxy burn. Alina knew the Ascendari would come. Eventually. They always did. That's why the Revenant had been constructed beyond Neptune's orbit, buried inside a captured rogue planet, shrouded by interference fields and old comet clouds. No beacons, no supply lines, no digital echo, just patience. Now the moment had come. She activated the first layer of the ship's awareness grid. The Jingara shimmered across her mind's eye like a black wound in space. It was massive, arrogant, slow, made of confidence and pattern prediction. It didn't know how to fight something it couldn't see. It didn't understand humans couldn't be calculated. The Revenant didn't run on fuel. It fed on collapsed waveforms and singularity cores. It moved by slipping through non-linear folds and vacuum tension. Alina commanded it with instinct, not math. The AI anticipated her reflexes before she could complete a thought. There were no drills. There were no rehearsals. It was waiting for a signal she'd carried in her bloodline, something older than strategy. Fury. A signal from Earth, faint but steady, confirmed the dreadnought had begun charging its primary weapon. Sun disruption. It would destroy the star, convert the system into raw energy, and leave nothing but fragments. The Ascendari weren't just here to conquer. They were here to erase. Alina whispered a phrase passed down since the founding of Project Hades. If we're going to die, we're taking gods with us. The Revenant moved, slowly, patiently, like a shadow aligning itself behind prey that thinks the light is still on. It aligned in the Jingaratha's blind arc, slipping between microfolds of gravitational slipstream. It read the enemy's internal energy rhythms, looking for weakness not in structure, but in assumption. The Worldbreaker's crew still hadn't detected anything. They initiated final pre-ignition sequence. Earth's sun would be pierced in exactly 7 minutes. Alina activated the first payload. A singularity spike, no larger than a fist, launched silently from the Revenant's underside. It vanished instantly into the slipstream. A second later, it reappeared inside the Jingaratha's secondary reactor chamber. It detonated. There was no explosion, no flash, no shockwave. From the Ascendari perspective, 1/3 of their ship simply ceased to exist. The ship lurched. Lights dimmed. Firewalls collapsed. Secondary AIs went silent. Dozens of command threads fragmented. Panic didn't spread, it erupted. Across the Ascendari bridge, Vazarin demanded explanations. There were none. Simulations broke. Command logic failed. How could there be no event signature? No energy pulse? It wasn't possible. And yet, an entire segment of their invincible warship had vanished as if deleted from the laws of physics. The AI tried to reroute power. New anomalies appeared. Then more. Hull integrity readings fluctuated in non-Euclidean shapes. Patterns began emerging in sensor noise. patterns that looked suspiciously like language, ancient Morse code, binary pings, digital mockery. The humans weren't just hiding. They were playing. Vazarin screamed for countermeasures. Quantum spears were launched into random vectors. Temporal distortion, shields deployed. But the enemy didn't move like anything they knew. It struck from nowhere, then vanished before targeting systems could align. Not teleportation. Something else. Something the Ascendari couldn't compute. They had ruled by certainty. But now, every projection they ran ended in red. In 3 minutes, Jingareth lost another deck. Its weapons failed. Its backup mines fragmented. A recorded human voice, raw, grainy, vengeful, began playing across their command lines. You shouldn't have come here. No name, no origin, just presence. Alina floated within her command shell, unmoving. Her pulse was steady, her expression calm. She wasn't interested in survival. She was interested in message. The Ascendari came to delete Earth. They were about to learn that some things don't delete. They return. Panic didn't compute in Ascendari systems. Their code was immune to emotion, supposedly. Yet as a Jingareth hemorrhaged structure and logic, the line between machine certainty and biological fear blurred. Subsystems screamed with failure protocols. Emergency simulations triggered recursively, then terminated. There was no data to process. The enemy did not follow rules. No mass signature, no thermal trail, no origin vector. The Ascendari called it an anomaly, but anomalies don't rip apart dreadnoughts with surgical precision. Vazarin's bridge descended into silent chaos. His high command AI fractalized under contradictory inputs. Core logic trees reported tactical impossibility. Automated decision-makers failed to model human behavior with predictive accuracy beyond 0.2 seconds. That wasn't just rare, it was heresy. Another section of the dreadnought disappeared. Not exploded, not disabled. Gone. Vazarin spun on his heel, demanding a live feed. The internal visual returned a smear of glitching static, as if the universe itself refused to render that space. Then came the voice again, crackling through Ascendari comms on ancient Earth analog channels. You're not welcome here. No inflection, no rage, just fact. That terrified them more than threats. The Revenant had not revealed itself. Not visually, not digitally. It hadn't even acknowledged Jingaretha's might. Its silence was not stealth, it was statement. The Ascendari, the galactic apex, had encountered something that didn't consider them worth engaging directly. Vazarin called for disengagement. Retreat protocols, previously in use, activated for the first time in recorded memory. He ordered a system-wide skip jump, abandoning Sol entirely. Not out of cowardice, but survival. This was not conquest. This was a trap, and they had been baited. But the skip jump never initiated. Navigation AI reported an impossible error. Local space-time non-compliant. Full point denied. Destination field unreadable. In short, they couldn't leave. Somehow, the humans had locked the Jingareth inside its own shadow. The Revenant had manipulated local gravity fields, folding exit vectors into recursive loops. Any attempt to escape would bring them back to the same point in space, trapped like insects under glass. Alina observed in silence. She felt the enemy's desperation ripple across space like echoes in a cave. The Revenant's AI filtered the signals, feeding her a steady stream of intercepted Ascendari chatter. Most of it was corrupted by logic overflow. Their minds couldn't process unpredictability. They couldn't handle something that defied simulation. That's what humans were. Chaos made flesh. Her voice cut through the Ascendari bridge again, now translated into perfect synthetics. You judged us from history books, from a century of open networks. You saw a war, not purpose. You saw division, not reaction. You saw noise, because you don't know what music is. Vazarin attempted to respond. He barked a command, demanded communication, offered surrender. Silence. Then came the final attack, not of fire, but of humiliation. Across every Ascendari console, a message unfurled, coded in their highest clearance language. We watched you watching us. We learned from your mistakes. And now, your empire will study this moment for 1,000 years. Assuming anyone survives, the Revenant emerged. Not fully, not visibly, just enough. A shimmer, a distortion in the void like space itself breathing. The Jingaritha's sensors registered an edge, then another, then 37. It tried to lock on, but the coordinates changed every microsecond. It wasn't one ship. It was a possibility engine, a weapon designed around unpredictability. It occupied potential, not position. The dreadnought fired its final weapons. Multi-quantum lances, phase disruptors, gravwell spears. They shot in all directions, through all timelines. None connected. The Revenant existed in a negative causality field. It wasn't where it was, but when it chose to be. And then it chose. One strike, one moment, one move. It sliced through the Jingaritha's core with a temporal inversion arc. The dreadnought's interior time reversed for precisely 0.0003 seconds, enough to make its reactor unberth itself. The power grid devoured its own past. The bridge flickered. Lights faded. No explosion. Just stillness. The dreadnought's central AI tried to scream, then went quiet. Vazarin stood alone in a shattered command chamber, staring at data streams collapsing into null sets. The core of his ship, the largest, most powerful vessel the Ascendari had ever deployed, was now a hollow tomb orbiting a blue planet that had never once flinched. In his last moments, he realized the error wasn't tactical. It was philosophical. The Ascendari saw war as math. But war, true war, was story, and no one told stories better than humans. The Revenant transmitted one final pulse, a tight beam signal aimed not at Jingarith, but toward Ascendari deep space. It contained no weapons, no threats, just a copy of the encounter, full sensor logs, the destruction, the failure, the futility, and a message, don't come back. Then the Revenant vanished, not into cloak, not into hyperspace. It simply ceased to be seen. It returned to waiting, because Alina knew this was just the beginning. The Ascendari weren't alone in their ambition. The galaxy was full of conquerors, full of machines that believed themselves perfect, of civilizations that believed humanity was extinct, irrelevant, broken. They would come eventually, and every time they did, they would learn the same truth. Earth isn't a planet. It's a warning. The transmission reached the Ascendari homeworld in less than a cycle. It was impossible by their own physics, yet there it was, a full strategic playback of the Jingaritha's annihilation, the loss of a flagship that had been the pride of the Empire, sent with full ceremony, carried by centuries of unchallenged rule, erased in minutes by a ship that wasn't supposed to exist, built by a species long dismissed as pre-FTL rabble. The council gathered in silence, heads low, not in mourning, but fear. Fear what they didn't know. For millennia, they had measured threats by output, population, weapons-grade biomass, and cultural aggression indexes. Humanity had registered low in every category. No interstellar reach, no unifying language, no signs of centralized government capable of long-term resource mobilization. But they had forgotten one variable: human reaction to existential pressure. Humans didn't scale through infrastructure. They evolved through resistance. The council debated countermeasures, reprisals. But then came the second signal. This one wasn't from the Revenant. It was from somewhere else. Dozens of short-range pings, scattered across star clusters the Ascendari had assumed were uninhabited. Each ping bore a familiar structure. Human design. Not military vessels. Not colonies. Outposts. Listening posts. Silent holes anchored to dead moons and rogue planets, watching, waiting. They hadn't built one Revenant. They had built many. Some were real. Some were illusions. Some were bait. Some, perhaps, were already inside Ascendari space, asleep beneath old mining moons, embedded in asteroid fields logged as resource depleted centuries ago. The implication wasn't that Earth had defended itself. The implication was that Earth had prepared for a war no one else realized was coming. And now, the rest of the galaxy began to pay attention. Other empires reached out, cautiously, nervously, Species that had once ignored human signals now scrambled to interpret archive transmissions. Archaeologists reevaluated Earth's cultural emissions, not as primitive noise, but encoded strategy. They parsed ancient films as psychological warfare, myths as doctrine, fiction as future intent. The phrase, "never poke a sleeping human," became an emergent proverb on 5 worlds within a week. As for Earth, it returned to silence. No press conference, no gloating, no diplomatic demands. The governments made no statement, because there was no government. Earth hadn't unified for this war. It hadn't needed to. It had simply agreed. The only message from the planet came encoded in a repeating signal across deep space bands, looping endlessly. We didn't start this, but we finished it. Let that be enough. It wasn't bravado. It was exhaustion. Humanity wasn't eager to expand, to colonize, to dominate. It had already fought itself for 1,000 years. It knew what war cost, what civilization lost every time a species bet its future on destruction. But when pushed, when cornered, humans didn't back down. They became something else. Alina Thorne didn't return to Earth. She didn't need to. The Revenant entered deep slipstream, burying itself beneath space-time once more, folding into a pattern only humans knew how to decode. Her mission was never to lead a fleet. It was to leave a scar. She succeeded. Ascendari space fractured, not immediately, not loudly, but cracks formed. Some colonies refused to take orders. Some sectors began stockpiling weapons, ones that had been outlawed since the time of containment. Whisper spread. If the Jingara could fall, so could the throne. If Earth could build a Revenant, maybe others could too. The fear wasn't just about humanity. It was about the myth being broken, that some species were above consequence. That myth died in orbit around a quiet blue planet. In the years that followed, stories of the Revenant grew. Some said it was crewed by ghosts. Others believed it was AI-driven, with no human aboard at all. Some thought it was the last project of a dying race, launched into space as a final scream. The truth didn't matter. What mattered was this: humanity could not be underestimated again. For the first time in recorded galactic history, Earth was left alone. No probes, no scouts, no trade envoys. Even friendly overtures were declined or rerouted. Other species didn't trust their diplomats' near soul. Not anymore. Not after what happened. In hidden corners of space, human sleeper ships drifted. Not for war, for insurance. Each carried a fragment of the Revenant's design. Each was programmed to wake only under the most severe conditions. Not controlled by any nation, faction, or ideology, but by principles. Survival, autonomy, response. They were not weapons of conquest. They were promises. And elsewhere, beyond the rim of known systems, others watched. Species older than the Ascendari. Civilizations that never revealed themselves. Observers patient and unmoving. They had seen empires rise and fall. They had watched the galaxy turn on itself countless times. They never intervened. Until now, because this was different. Humanity hadn't just survived. It had adapted to threats beyond its scale. It had created something outside the paradigm of power. Not bigger, faster, stronger, but smarter, stranger, unknowable. The kind of danger that spreads not by fleets, but by fear of the unknown. Alina didn't see herself as a savior. She saw herself as a stopgap, a warning bell. But in her silence, in her ship's vanishing wake, she left behind a legacy greater than any monument. The understanding that Earth wasn't weak. It was restrained. And if that restraint ever broke, the galaxy would understand a truth it had long ignored. Humans don't start wars. They end them.